Hello, welcome to the Luminous Star channel. All of my current subscribers, thank you so much, my stars, for motivating me to keep this channel Luminous Star active. Everyone who's visiting for the first time, scroll down, select the subscription button below, and become a part of the Star family. Welcome to Luminous Star. Today's video, narcissistic parents can set their children up for destruction. Please don't forget to like and or share today's video. Trauma bonding, unfortunately, is the glue that helps to bind parents who have a narcissistic personality disorder to their children. There are several methods that the narcissistic parents will use in order to build trauma bonding. Next point, trauma bonding methods of narcissists. All right, first one, gaslight techniques. Poor reinforcements of love after narcissistic rage, silent treatment, and etc. Emotional manipulation, verbal misuse, abusive language, character assassination, hijacking of identity, triangulation, and projection. A lot of parents who are cluster personalities and narcissists, what they do is they will use trauma bonding techniques in order to fulfill their own false self-image, or to repair it, or to make sure that it remains active and alive and relevant. They're loyal to their false self-image. So the trauma bonding methods are very important. They will gaslight their own children, setting them up for failure, causing the children to be double-minded. On one hand, the children, they may think, well, this can't be right. And then the parents who are narcissists, the parents who may have a cluster personality, they do something else, they say something else, and the children start doubting themselves. They start doubting their own sanities. They begin to doubt their own feelings, their own thoughts. So the gaslight technique alone is horrible, yet many narcissistic parents use it. Poor reinforcements of love after narcissistic rage, silent treatment, etc. Okay, so after the narcissistic parent has shown some sort of affection or love for their children, they'll turn right around and pull the rug out from under the children by using the silent treatment, by displaying narcissistic rage. So these are poor reinforcements of love. The child becomes very confused. The child not only becomes confused, the child may start to feel anxiety. Then the child may end up on meds for depression. The child may begin to feel anxious, being fearful of their parents or the narcissistic parent. The child may begin to feel uneasy in the home, yet they don't know what to do. Okay, so again, that's another trauma bonding method, because the child wishes, and of course, naturally, they want the connection with their parents. However, the parents treat the children, the narcissistic parents that is, they treat the children in this poor manner. And then of course, the anger will set in. And the child really feels defenseless, helpless. Because in a sense, they're children. They count on their parents to take care of him or her. However, the narcissistic parent is being negligent. Next trauma bonding method, emotional manipulation. That's self-explanatory. Verbal misuse, abusive language, they kind of go hand in hand. Up under the umbrella of abusive language is verbal misuse. The parents may insult their children, calling them all types of things that are very unpleasant. And not only that, the verbal misuse, insulting the children, putting down the children. Whenever the child seeks reinforcements of love from the parent, or their love to be reciprocated, the parent uses verbal misuse to cut the child down, to make the child, to influence the child to feel hopeless, to influence the child to feel like they're not loved, but they do it verbally. Abusive language, again, is a big one. Up under the umbrella of abusive language is verbal misuse. Up under the umbrella of abusive language is also cursing someone, not just using foul language. These parents will use foul language in front of their children and towards their children, but it goes deeper. Sometimes they will attempt to place curses on their children. For example, they may begin to call the child stupid, and every time the child turns around, the child is being called stupid more than they're being called by their own name. The child will identify with being stupid or dumb, and before you know it, the child will behave in such a manner. The child will behave as if they are not intelligent or they don't have any type of intelligences. However, there are gifts, there are talents. That child will not know what those are. They will identify with being stupid or having stupidity simply because the children are being called that by their parents who have a cluster personality or narcissistic personality. The trauma bonding comes in when that child, on one hand, they want to continue to connect to their parents. However, on the other, they feel like the parents don't love him or her. Trauma bonding. It's a very confusing and scary and diabolical thing to go through. So the abusive language, again, is a very big one. How many of you know someone who has been just seriously cursed out by their own parents? Maybe you were that person. Every time you turned around, the parents were cursing you out. But not only that, they were placing curses upon you by calling you a certain thing, and you began to identify with it. And lo and behold, you started to behave in that regard because you began to identify with it, whatever that curse was. Another one, for example, is stating that the child will never amount to anything. And lo and behold, the child begins to behave in that manner. They began to fulfill that very reality. So abusive language is a big one. Verbal abuse goes up under the umbrella of abusive language. So it is not just them using foul and profane language and verbal misuse. It is also placing curses upon the children by calling them something other than their name. And that child began to behave in that manner because they identify with whatever the parents was calling them, which is not a very good thing. Okay? Character assassination, setting the children up to appear to other people, whether it's other family members, whether it's others in the community, but setting that child up repeatedly to appear like a very undesirable person, a very unfavorable person, a person to avoid, a person to hate, a person to abuse. This is another way of setting the child up to be preyed upon by others in the world who have a predatory nature after they leave the nest, if they should leave the nest when they're older. So character assassination is another big one. Hijacking their identities. Take children who don't know who they are because they're being called stupid all the time, or they're being told they will never amount to anything. That is a child who will grow up and have a poor sense of identity or have an identity crisis long before they turn 18. The narcissistic parent can easily hijack the identities of the child or the children. The children or that child will not really know who they are. They will have a poor sense of themselves. This is where enmeshment comes in. Strengthening the trauma bonding. Okay, stay with me. I know this is very grim, but I just really wanted to paint a picture here because this is one that many have attested to their experiences of growing up in a dysfunctional family where at least one parent was a narcissist or a cluster personality. Triangulation. That's where the trauma and bonding can be strengthened as well. Example, a child who is being sexually molested by one parent as the other parent looks away and denies that it ever happened trauma bonding via triangulation. Projection. This is where the narcissistic parent, or the parent who has a cluster personality, pardon me, the parent who has a cluster personality will project all of their stuff onto the children or to a particular child. The things that he or she does not like about themselves, they will project that onto the child or to other children in particular in the family. This can even be someone who is out in the community scoping to prey upon a child sexually. Everything that they don't like, the cluster personality does not like about him or herself, they will project onto that child, making it very easy to demonize the child, therefore making it easy to prey upon the child. So there's your projection. All of these trauma bonding methods are very challenging to work through. It is very difficult for a person to work through these. This is often why a lot of people, they turn 30 years old, 40, 50 or whatever, and they're still having to work through this. It's a very unfortunate thing. However, I am so glad, due to narcissistic awareness, people are waking up and they're finding that there is some hope. There are some ways that they can turn this around. I think it's deeper than hope. Sometimes they say hope is not a plan. However, sometimes you just need that little bit of hope to get the ball rolling. Violation, the violation, rape, and thievery of narcissistic abuse by parents can be devastating to children. As children of narcissists become adults, he or she is faced with the challenge of dissecting the adverse effects of narcissistic abuse. Adverse effects of dysfunctional relationships with narcissists. The first adverse effect, depression. I mentioned this one. Poor self-image. I also mentioned that one. Identity crisis. Mismanaged and misplaced anger. Okay, now I did not mention this one. Mismanaged and misplaced anger. I mentioned the anger, but I didn't talk about how it can really turn into resentment. As that child grows into an adult, resentment may set in. See, the first is the anger due to what he or she has experienced at the hand of their cluster personality or narcissistic parent or parents. Then the resentment can occur. Therefore, you'll have mismanaged anger. And the misplaced anger can come in when the person is not dealing with the narcissistic parent directly, but they tend to take things out on others around him or her. The narcissist and the cluster personality parent, they're not able to feel empathy. Therefore, they're not going to feel the pain of their child. Should that child grow up and want to have a conversation about what they experienced or how they experienced their parents growing up, their cluster personality parents, their narcissistic personality parents. Those parents are more than likely going to have a wall up. They're going to be shut down, cut off. So then the misplaced anger can occur because that person, that child who now is an adult, now they realize that the parents are not reciprocating, okay? They're not listening. They're not available emotionally. After all those years, things are still painfully the same. So the child who is now an adult of a narcissistic parent, they have to have another outlet. They have to go elsewhere, which can deepen their anger, again, causing resentment. So the misplaced anger is when when that person, since they know they don't have the parent, they tend to take out their anger on other people around him or her, which will endanger them from having healthy relationships. Either the healthy relationships that they currently have are going to end, or because they're pushing other people away who have nothing to do with what happened to them when they grew up, or they're going to give up on investing in healthy relationships. Either way, it's misplaced anger, because the anger wasn't dealt with before it got to the stage of resentment. That's your mismanaged anger. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. Anxiety, addiction, obsession, repeated dysfunctional relationships with people who have a predatory nature, and trauma. Usually layers of trauma will occur when a person has a narcissistic abusive parent and a person who has a parent who may have a cluster personality. Usually they may have several layers of trauma because this stems back from their childhood. So of course they have childhood trauma, but what I'm saying is usually there's layers of trauma. This is when you may get into the complex symptoms of complex PTSD as opposed to just symptoms of PTSD. Okay, so let's move on. Parents who have a narcissistic personality or a cluster B personality usually are reenacting their unresolved childhood issues. Narcissistic parents often emotionally bully their children into parenting them. Adult children of narcissists often exist in two paradigms at the same time. They become spectators and participants within their reality. So children who grew up in a dysfunctional family with a narcissistic parent or narcissistic parents or cluster B personality parents, right? They have to exist in two different paradigms within their reality. They become spectators and they are participants. This is usually a defense or a coping, it's usually a coping mechanism. They have to survive. That child has to escape the horrors that they are living at that time. So they tend to exist in two paradigms at the same time within their reality, and they become accustomed to doing this. Most do not realize they're doing it. Narcissistic parents, they emotionally bully, they emotionally manipulate their children into parenting them. The child becomes an adult and becomes a parent long before they really do become an adult and a parent, or possibly a parent. So they have to grow up quickly. And they parent their parents, which is also very abusive. It's a sign of neglect on the parents' part. Parents who have a cluster B personality or they have a narcissistic personality, they are usually reenacting unresolved childhood issues or painful issues. They're reenacting it. So they're not even present in the parent-child relationship. Physically, they're there. They may even seem like they're there because they talk to the child or whatever, right? However, narcissistic parents and parents who have a cluster B personality, they are usually checking out repeatedly. They are usually not present in the relationship. Adult children of narcissists often exist in two paradigms at the same time as a coping mechanism. They become spectators and participants within their reality. So I just explained that. This is a coping mechanism. They have to find a way to survive their existence, their reality, all the crazy making, all of the shenanigans, all of the diabolical acts, all of the dysfunctional behaviors of their parents. All of those tactics for source supply that the cluster B personality parent and the narcissistic parent does in order to make sure that their false self-image survives. All of this is going on. All of this is going on while the child is trying to make sense of it. What child do you know can make sense of that? What adult do you know can make sense of that? So adult children of narcissists and cluster B personalities often do exist in two paradigms at the same time. Spectators and participants. And they do this unconsciously. The path of destruction can be especially cruel when one realizes that narcissistic parents are incapable of taking any responsibility for their actions, choices, and emotional state due to a lack of empathy. Some may describe their experiences as traumatic because it is as if their parents never existed at all. There are some who choose to learn how to parent themselves. A lot of adults who are children of narcissistic parents, one of the things they have to do, well, they don't have to, but they often choose, is to learn how to parent themselves. Okay, sometimes they're still parenting their parents, but they usually gravitate towards parenting themselves because it dawns on them, or they realize that this is something that they have to do. Again, they don't have to do it, but they usually do that because it helps them to continue to exist on this planet in a way that they can continue to survive and thrive forward. In other words, a lot of people may be existing on the planet, but are they really living? Are they really present in the moment? A lot of us aren't. Again, this is a mechanism, a coping mechanism. Now, one of the reasons why it's a path of destruction, because again, the child was groomed by the narcissistic parent to think and behave a certain way, therefore to exist in a certain way that is not very good for him or her. It doesn't benefit that child. As they grow up, a lot of the things that they were taught, in other words, they were groomed a particular way, they were groomed to behave codependently, basically. Or that child will develop a narcissistic personality. Either way, it doesn't fare out very well for that child or those children. It's a path of destruction in that regard. There's so many other reasons why it will be a path of destruction, but I really want to highlight that. Some do feel like the parents never existed at all. Number one, because they parented themselves. They feel like, or they may think, or they may perceive it as if they were left to themselves, even though the parents may have been in the household, or at least one parent was in the household, but they have a cluster B personality. They have a narcissistic personality. So in a sense, that child may grow up feeling and thinking and perceiving that they pretty much not only parent their parents, they parent themselves, and they were left to themselves. So it was like the parents was like a phantom or a ghost. They really didn't exist at all. Some pretty scary stuff. You know, it's kind of unsettling too when you think about it. This is what makes their experience so traumatic, because it was as if the parents weren't there at all. Okay, let's move forward. Tool number 1, discontinue to take responsibility for the poor choices, dysfunction, and emotional state of narcissistic parents. In other words, discontinue parenting your parents. If they have a narcissistic personality, matter of fact, just in general, you know, discontinue to parent your narcissistic parents. Those parents who have a cluster B personality. You know, you're not responsible for their poor choices. And anyone who's watching who has experience in this, you're not responsible for the poor choices of your narcissistic parents. You're not responsible for their dysfunctional behavior. And you're certainly not responsible for the emotional state that they remain to be in. It's all by choice. Okay? Second tool. Continue to work your support base in order to remain focused upon your own healing and thriving forward. Stick with the support base. If you do not have a support base, please invest in it. Look into it. After all, you're going to be the one navigating it. You get to say whom and what your support base consists of in order to make sure that you are okay, in order to make sure that you're thriving forward. Really, it's up to you. All right, let's go on to the next tool. Practice self-preservation and personal boundaries without apology. Don't apologize for reclaiming your life and reclaiming your identity and reclaiming your personal power. Why should you apologize for that? Just think about the ordeal that you went through when you were a child. You survived. You're here. Write the epilogue to your story. Okay? You don't have to keep telling the story that the narcissist sold you. You don't have to keep telling that story. It's a lie. It's false. Practice self-preservation and personal boundaries. Don't apologize for it. Okay, having said all that, I want to go ahead and conclude by saying thank you to everyone who's watched this video with me today or tonight. Wherever you are, I wish you the very best. Stay tuned for more vlogs. Stay tuned for more videos.